G'day everyone, welcome again for another episode of Ask Aureus Anything, our live Q&A.
G'day, Sam Panetta.
Jackson Millan, the Wealth Mentor. Sam's going to be referred to as the bearded warrior today.
Oh geez.
I snuck that one in there.
We are up to the 8th Q&A session, mate.
It's exciting.
8th session.
People have been tolerating our beardedness for 8 weeks.
8 weeks in business. It's first week of March. Year's flying.
I know, getting close to my big 29th birthday.
When's your birthday?
30th of March. Got a few more Q&As between now and then.
Oh, mate, look, we've done all right. We hit 1,000 views on YouTube this week.
Did we?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so we need to keep going with that, but that's not a bad little goal, milestone.
First milestone of many. So for those of you who haven't checked out our YouTube page, make sure you go like, subscribe, and all the rest of the good stuff.
The podcasts are good.
We've taken on a full-time creative director who is now breaking up all of our big content, making it into smaller videos, easier for everyone to consume, so you don't have to invest as much time when you're on the run. So make sure you go subscribe. There'll be plenty of that coming up, which is going to be great.
Yeah, and it's mate, we can add more value to the Wealth Mentor community. We're at nearly 900 members. Actually.
Very exciting.
So it's picking up, which is good. It's helping us reach more and more people and add more and more value. So
yeah. So look, for those of you, it's an open community, although it's by application only. Anyone who's serious fills out their questions is able to join. So if you've got family members, friends, anyone in your network you think can get value from our friendly banter, feel free to add them in. Hopefully they get some value out of it. So we've got an upcoming workshop next Tuesday evening. It's just a 2-hour workshop where we'll cover off some high-level strategic concepts for business owners particularly. So it's going to be at our office in Brookvale next Tuesday from 6 till 8 p.m. There's an event that I believe we've shared within the community. Otherwise, you can get access to that from the Aureus Financial page. We've only got 24 seats, so make sure you do register if you do want to come. And we'll be giving all registrants a free copy of my book. So just a little bit of a value add. So for those of you who are business owners, make sure you get involved, and I'm sure you'll get a lot out of it. Also, congratulations to Big Matt Bailey from Bailey's Diesel. Mate, you're the best contributor for last week, so you won a copy of my book. I won't be giving away my book every week. We'll try and mix it up. So it's a bit of a lucky dip. Whoever's the best contributor this week, he's going to be in the running for a great prize. So make sure you contribute value, ask questions. This is all for you guys. So make sure you get involved.
Yeah, look, feel free to participate. If you're sitting there or you're on the bus and you're listening to this and you've got a question, don't be shy, ask the question. A lot of people every single week after the Q&A, they send us an email, they shoot us through a Facebook message or a text message, and they say, oh, hey, we've got this question for you. Ask it live. We'll answer it on the spot. All the live questions take dominance over the ones that we've accumulated during the week.
Yeah. Also, further to that, post it up on the community as well. Like, not only will we give our 2 cents, you'll likely get some insights from other people who've had experiences for themselves. What we found in our workshops and things that we've done that we've facilitated in a group environment, people learn the most from the people in the room. And we've got nearly 900 people as part of the community. So make sure you leverage that insight and experience, because it can help you go a long way.
Well, we saw it at the last workshop that we did a few Saturdays ago. We saw all these different business owners come together, and obviously they were getting a lot of value out of what we were talking about, but they also had specialties in their own niches, and they were all adding value to each other. So all these business owners congregating, they all walked away with a lesson that not even we expected them to learn.
Yep. So let's dive into it.
General advice warning before I start. This is general advice only, not specific advice. Before you action anything, make sure you consult a professional.
Yep. Consult Big Sal Michelli.
Sales
tips. All right, so let's dive into the questions. So first one, will Jackson's book be available as an audio book? Not yet, but we're going to work on it. Ron Harriento, if you're listening, mate, we might have to tee up a time to come down to the studio and punch out the audio book. A friend of ours And a client of ours is the GM of Studio 301. They've just gone through a big revamp. Shout out to 301. And it's the best recording studio that Australia's ever seen. So we will be recording our podcast there, and we'll also look to do the audio book there. So watch this space. We'll get it done.
Cool. A similar question from the same bloke. Sam, are you going to write a book? I might write a book. I don't know. I'm going to write a book. I might do a joint book. Jackson and I might co-author something. Might do some on my own. The thing is there's a lot of things I want to talk about. There's a lot of things that I want to say. But the actual getting the time or making the time to write a book, it's a big commitment. I will do it. I don't know when I'll do it. The sooner the better.
Here's a question for you guys. If you wanted to see another book from us, what would you want us to write about? Let us know in the comments. Shoot us an email, post a message up. I might even create a poll to see what the community wants us to write about. And I will ensure that this bloke here dedicates the time to writing the book.
I'm just going to go up to
the
farm for 2 weeks, mate. Leave you here, and I'll just go live there with a candle and a quill. Is that what they have? And just write.
That's it. Fantastic. I love that. All right. So, what are some of the things that you guys provide to your clients? Good question. This is not something that we've been asked in the Q&A before, which is great. Always good to have new questions. We don't try and actively promote the nitty-gritty of what we do, because we feel that if we add enough value back to the community, people are going to seek out what we do anyway, through the value that we've added through the process. But in a nutshell, what we do is we enable our clients to clearly define what's important to them, both in their business and in their life, and allow them to position those things as a vehicle to allow them to have peace of mind and certainty about achieving the destinations that are important to them. We do that through education, through coaching, and through facilitation, leveraging our team of experts to be able to ensure that they have access to the right advice at the right time to achieve their goals. Our kind of catch line is we're your guide in pursuit of financial freedom.
Yeah, so we get this a lot. So people know that we work with money, I guess, that investing in business and things like that, but they don't, a lot of people want to know what's the exact service that you guys do. Well, it's in a nutshell, it's financial services, but it's not one in particular. It's whatever screwdriver or hammer we need to pick up to help the clients achieve their goals. And that comes back to having a strategy, and that comes back to, what does the client want? And that's the big thing I think that separates us, is that we start off with, well, Mr. Client, what do you want? What are you trying to achieve? And then we can work our way backwards from there.
This is the interesting thing, that in Australia, and really for most of the developed world, people have this relationship with financial services as products. And unfortunately, we know that there's no one product that is ever going to get you to achieving financial freedom. And unfortunately, the industry as a whole has been reliant on the use of products as a transactional way of doing business with retail customers. And unfortunately, a single mortgage, a single super fund, a single investment portfolio is never going to get you to where you need to go. And it's really about how do you craft the strategy? And more importantly, how do we define what it is that the strategy is trying to achieve based on what you're trying to do in your life that will ultimately help you follow all the right steps to get to where you need to go. So we're somewhat of map makers and coaches to help you stick the path.
I hope that helps clear that up.
Hopefully.
All right, so here's an interesting one, not a question that I'm asked often. Can you please explain what the amount of household debt is? All right, so this sounds like this question has come from someone's watching the TV, or someone's listening to an economist or the Reserve Bank of Australia, and they're saying, they're talking about that household debts are at an all-time high. What is household debt? Well, when they're talking about household debts, essentially they're talking about all the debt in the country that's held by households, all right, divided by the amount of households there is. So let's say your household has a $500,000 mortgage, a $50,000 car loan, and a $20,000 credit card debt, then your household debt is $570,000. So people do this. Economists use the household debt as, I guess, for two things. They use it to see how effective interest rate rises or drops will be. Essentially, the more debt the average household has, the more acute the effect of an interest rate cut or hike will be. And, with Australia, with property prices at, near all-time highs, they're, a little bit, but they're lower than they were sort of 6 months ago, 9 months ago. And with household debts, still being relatively at all-time highs, the reserve banks and the economists are concerned that rising interest rates are going to have too much of a bad knock-on effect through the economy. And as such, they're a little bit tempered back to, not go so hard on interest rates. And you can look to financial markets and you can see that interest rates aren't priced in until, well towards the end of this year, even into next year. So it's, that's all due to the high amount of household debts.
And this is interesting, and to put it into context, the whole idea of household debts as a figure that an economist is talking about may not mean a whole lot to you, but it can mean a lot in the context of your individual strategy. So, for example, I was speaking to a client today who was asking about what could be the potential implications of selling their house now, even though it's not an ideal time, or waiting through to next spring, given that the surroundings of their house have a lot of deciduous trees. So in winter, the house doesn't look very nice because all the leaves have fallen off. And given that it's being sold as more of a family home, it doesn't really appeal to investors. That emotional aspect plays a big part. But they were concerned about interest rates increasing between now and spring, and that having an impact on people being able to afford their house. When we talked about this, we spoke about the context of household debts and what that means for when the Reserve Bank considers to change rates. So it was kind of surmised that based on how inflation is looking, how the overall economy is looking, and given that significant household debt figure, the likelihood of having aggressive interest rate increases is going to be very, very slim, if not very unlikely, because this flow-on effect of that would just crush households, cause people to default or go into financial hardship, and that's just not good for the country as a whole. So important to consider the bigger picture.
And it's interesting here, right? So let's say that the typical homeowner, let's say they can get an interest rate of 4% these days, okay? You can probably get it cheaper, but let's say 4%. Most banks, when they're assessing how much you can borrow, they're using a floor rate of 7.5% or 8% or something like that. But typically in different times where interest rates were higher, they used the current interest rate, so let's say 4% today plus 2%. So it would take it to 6%. So if the floor rate's 8% and the bank's buffering rates for serviceability is somewhere around 6%, you could get a whole lot of interest rate rises before it starts to slow down what people can actually borrow. The banks are still going to lend the same amounts even if there was one interest rate hike or two interest rate hikes, but it's not about that. It becomes about your actual household and having to pay the debt back, not how much borrowing as much as the bank will lend you.
Good question.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting one. So what do you guys work on behind the scenes? Apart from growing glorious beards, we work on a lot of stuff behind the scenes. Particularly something that's taken a lot of our time and that we've been investing a lot of time in is our learning dashboard that we're developing at the moment. As you probably heard us speaking about before, we see that there's a fundamental issue in Australia around financial literacy. There were some studies done recently that were at all-time highs of people being stressed about money, their ability to stick to a budget. Only 25% of people have a long-term financial plan. And all of these things, I believe, and we believe, come down to that financial literacy and understanding the language of money. And a lot of the commentators and educators out there just make it too hard. People don't have the time to go and do a university degree on applied finance to be able to manage their own money. It's just not relevant. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of educators out there that only talk about one piece of the puzzle, like renovating for profit or flipping houses or accumulating houses or buying shares, but they don't address the fundamental aspect of what do you need to do in order to run your finances and make informed and educated decisions to be able to work towards your goals. So what we've tried to do is really simplify it, make it really simple, no BS approach to helping people understand those gaps in their knowledge and ideally work towards being able to do things for themselves. So we've got our first course, which is going to be launching shortly. And we're also trying to build that into a kind of bit of a nurture sequence and also allow us to automate the delegation of action items. Because as we know, learning is only one part of the equation. Acting on what you learn is the most important part. If you don't act, you're not going to get to the outcomes. So we want to try and simplify that for you to hold you accountable to being reminded to kind of do things when you learn that. So that's a really big part and project that we're working on right now, which we think is going to be game changing for people in Australia.
Yeah, and we're working on a lot of other things behind the scenes as well. So it's a day in the life of Sam and Jackson. I guess our particular roles are very delegated. So Jackson and I don't really cross over anything at all. Before we got into the business, we've done a couple of personality tests and business personality tests, and we delegated tasks depending on who has the most strength in that particular area. That's actually working really well. I guess for myself, well, for both of us, one of the big things that we're doing at the moment is we're getting all our skills onto an intranet that we're building, all our skills, all our systems, all our processes. So that way, as the team grows, it becomes easier and easier and easier to train people. And I think we need to do that, because if you've got, all these great strategies and all these systems and processes and the way that you do things, if it's in your head, it's not good enough. It needs to be down so people can read it, they can watch videos, they can understand. We're spending a lot of time building that out.
Yeah. We worked it out that with our current framework, we've delegated that every single person in the team needs to write 5 processes or get 5 things out of their brain onto the intranet a week. And given our current size of our team, we'll have over 4,000 systems and processes within 12 months, which is phenomenal. And it's all searchable, meaning that when we add new resources into the team, we can help them get trained very, very quickly. And as a business owner, that's invaluable, because consider the amount of time that you would save if you never had to train a new staff member again.
Yeah, and I guess what else do we do? I'm still focusing a lot on the lending side of the business at the moment. I still heading that up. So that's good fun. What about yourself, Jackson? What do you do?
I'm still obviously working with my clients, trying to help them map their plans, hold them accountable, and advise them through things that are coming up. And of course, I'm really trying to get my head around the online marketing side of business. Something that we'd always outsource, but something that we're trying to actively learn about, so we're immersed in it, and we know what we need to do to kind of continue to scale our business. So.
Yeah, they're busy days.
Always busy.
There's plenty going on
behind the scenes. Exactly right. Now, for those of you watching, ask your questions. Doesn't matter what it is. It can be financial related, business, life, how to do whatever, how to walk your dog, how to wash your car. Anything you want to know, we'll try our best to answer.
I can wash cars like a champion.
You can wash my car, Sam. I don't know how to do it.
All right. So this is a question that I get often. That last question was actually really good, by the way. Getting into the nitty gritty of it. I'm so confused. I don't know whether to buy an investment property now or save up more and buy a home. What do you guys suggest? Look, I get this one all the time. Do you know what I mean? People, they want to get into the property market, I guess as soon as possible. It's that FOMO, it's that fear of missing out. It's not a bad decision. I normally suggest that people should accumulate as much property as they can afford as soon as they can afford it. You shouldn't try time property markets. It never ends up well. But whether someone should buy an investment property or save up more and buy a home, well, it comes back to your strategy. It comes back to how much you're saving, how quickly you're saving it. Let's say that if you continued on your trajectory and you could save the extra amount that you needed to buy the home, and you could get there in, a short period of time, let's say, 12 months or 18 months or 2 years or something like that, you'd probably hold out and go for the home. Because if you bought the investment property today and tried to sell it in 2 years to buy the home, there's stamp duty costs, there's selling costs, and while over the long term property performs fine, it always performs well. In the short term, in a 2-year period, you don't know if property is going to go up, down, or sideways. So if your goal, if it's more important for you to have your home in a short term, I'd keep saving. If you have a goal of, let's say, buying your dream home in, say, 15 years or 20 years or something like that, then I would probably suggest looking to accumulate wealth. And if that's wealth in investment properties, over the next 15 or 20 years, then you probably have a crack at doing that. Look, there's no right answer there. You need to work out what your goals are, what your strategy is, and then execute on that.
Yeah, I think the important thing that people often overlook when it comes to property is that although property has always been a consistent performer in Australia in the kind of blue chip areas, it is a long-term investment. And just because people have been able to make some really quick wins through this last growth cycle of Sydney and Melbourne doesn't mean that that's always going to be the case. And typically the minimum investment time frame you should have for any growth investment, whether it be shares or property, should be 5 to 7 years plus. Now, we had a conversation along these lines with a client recently, and we spoke about they have the ability to afford their home now, but given the amount of debt that they'd be taking on for it, they just didn't feel like having that amount of pressure. So we said, okay, well, we've got capacity, we've got the affordability. How about we consider investing now and revisit this situation in 3 years' time and decide on whether we continue to invest, or at that stage, whether we essentially decide, okay, well, now we're going to start working towards buying the home. Now, the idea of that strategy was that we would always hold the investment properties that were required until such a time as we'd realised enough capital growth on those investments to make it worthwhile for making the investment decision in the first place. Because as Sam rightly said, when you buy a property, you're already in the red. You've got the stamp duty costs, which are circa 4%. And then, of course, you then need to consider what the sale costs are going to be, where most agents are charging 2% these days. So we're really talking about 6% minimum on the value of that property in order just to break even. And considering the long-term historical growth rates of property, we typically use a very conservative number of about 4.5%. It's going to take you at least a few years, if not more, in order to make it a worthwhile investment. I definitely think it's really about the timing of what is the destination. If the destination is ultimately to live in your own home, then hold off for that. If you are happy to defer that, or if you're happy to rent vest, continue to rent where you desire living and have your money working for you, and that works really well as well.
We've had a question come up.
Salvatore Michelli, Spicy Sal. Is there a direct correlation between the length of my beard and the scope of my financial knowledge? And if so, what beard products do you use personally? That's phenomenal, Sal.
Sal.
I think that there's no such thing as that correlation because you're a very smart man and you don't have any facial hair. So I think that is not a good observation. But in any case, the beard products that I use are, as my missus would be actually very happy, they're vegan products, and I buy them from my barber at Captain Sipsops in Manly. Shout out to Kaylee, best barber in Sydney, Australia, if not the world. I hope that answered your question, Sal. Great question, mate. I really enjoy your contributions.
Oh, very
Anyone
good,
else who wants to have a dig, feel free to post up your questions.
All right. So
what do we got now, mate?
We have...
Here we go. So how do I set myself on the path to get out of my business? And I think what you mean by that question is not being involved in the day-to-day running of your business, which is a really great question. It's something that a lot of my business clients always ask. Funnily enough, I was catching up with a business client of mine and a member of their team today to talk about how they're implementing the right strategies to get them on the path to be phased out of their business. And actually, another client of mine I spoke to today that's just successfully phased himself out, but is still working on trying to make the business profitable in the process. So this seems to be a very, very common topic and really a dream for most business owners. It is not as simple as a lot of people make it out to be. Those of you who have tried, I'm sure you can attest to that. But there is a methodology involved. Now, I've spoken about this before in the Q&A. There's typically 4 stages in your business journey. There is the stage where you're a technician. Typically, when you start in business, you start the business and you're on the tools. You're doing the trade. You're delivering the outcomes. You're working directly with the customers. And this is the stage in which, if you're good at what you do, you can make good money. And a lot of business owners get stuck in this phase because they know that when they go to the next phase, there's going to be a bit of a J curve. There's going to be a correction in their earnings. And we've been able to see this looking at our clients' data in terms of their business journey. This happens. So the next stage is manager, where you transition from technician to manager. Now, the longer you leave this transition, the more painful it will be. So if you can do this sooner rather than later, assuming that you've got the cash flow and the infrastructure to support it, then it's best to do it sooner rather than later. And the idea of being a manager is being able to empower and educate and uplift your technicians to be able to do a very good job. Now, a lot of technicians will always say, no one can do it as good as me. But the way you've got to look at it is, would you prefer to have just you doing it at 100%? Or would you prefer to have 2 or 3 people doing it 70? Even if it's 2 people at 70, they're still better than you. So it's about making that transition and being able to support those people and ensure that you can continue to build and grow that team. The next step out is being a leader. And being a leader is about making sure that you have a line of middle management. So the technicians are no longer reporting to you. You're no longer training them, uplifting them, and nurturing them. You are now driving the ship. You're the captain. And look, for most business owners at all of these stages, you are playing some type of leadership position, but unless you can do it solely as your kind of day-to-day role, your business will never grow to its fullest potential. And then the big transition is going from a leader to an entrepreneur. And an entrepreneur is typically somebody who is not involved in the day-to-day operations of their business. They've typically got a GM or operations manager or somebody who's dealing with all of the day-to-day running of the business, managing the team, hiring, firing, all of those nice things. And you as an entrepreneur are really sitting on the board, contributing strategic value and advice back to the business, or really just hands off completely. At that stage, that transition is sometimes hard. In many cases, it requires you to potentially dilute your ownership of the business. So you have people there who are managing the business who have a vested interest in continuing to grow it. Or essentially, you need to make sure you pay top dollar for the right people to ensure that they exercise and execute on your vision. Just because you are there doesn't mean that you will stay there. So it's very important that you understand what is required at each of those stages, from both your perspective as the business owner, but also from the business in order for it to continue to achieve its goals. So the first thing really at the technician role, drive revenue, drive sales. Try and have a profitability margin that allows you, when you do make that jump to manager, to continue to pay yourself a market salary and employ good quality people that you can incentivize through their remuneration to do a really good job. When it goes to jumping from a manager to a leader, you need to ensure that you have the right operations and automations and systemization in your business to create efficiency in the way that you do business, which will maximize your cost to serve and ensure that you run a healthy and profitable and scalable business. And as an entrepreneur, you need to ensure that you have the right oversight of your overall business and you have the ability to have accountability in your team who are now acting unsupervised to ensure that they don't do anything that destroys your legacy and what you've created.
And this is a deep topic, and you can talk about this for a very long time. This is essentially the entire crux of being in business, is working your way up this ladder to run. So it reminds me of a couple of podcasts. So a few weeks ago, we launched with the Alex Manini podcast, and we talked about this in practical terms. We talked about Alex being in business and getting to that point where the team was running efficiently without him. And then as things go wrong, what happens? And you need to step back into the business and take yourself down a step. And that's emotionally, it's draining for, it's not all numbers and figures. It's actual hard work. So jump on there, have a look at that. That's a lot of good insight. And next week's podcast, we've actually got someone on there who does this full time for other people's businesses. He teaches them how to do this and work their way up the ladder.
He's done it himself.
So it's a topic that we talk a lot about, especially because we've a big chunk of our client base being business owners. It's something that people are really interested in. So if you've got 2 hours spare, go back a couple of weeks on the podcast and look forward to next week's podcast Tuesday morning, and there's some really good info in there.
Yeah. Cool, Sam.
All right. So I like this question when I got it. So we asked, you guys don't talk much about financial markets. It would be great to see a weekly session recapping what is going on with the markets. Would you guys put something together like this? I think we could. Yeah, I think we could put something together about what's going on in property markets, in stock markets, in all economies in Australia, globally. I'm sure we could put something together. And people actually like this stuff. There's a lot of it in the media because people like listening to it. They like hearing about it. The reason I guess we're cautious to put something together like this is because we're pro strategy, right? So we think the strategy is 70, 80, 90% of the battle, and then the investments that will come off the back of that is what helps you get there. But most people don't get to the stage where the investing becomes important because they don't get their mindset, they don't get the strategy right in the first place. So yeah, we don't want to, I guess, put too much emphasis on financial markets. We don't want our clients to think, if the market's gone down this week, they should sell it and then, buy it back the following week if it's gone down lower. And it's a mess. Very few people can do that properly. Even people who do it professionally, half of them are successful, the other half aren't. So, would you guys like something like that? If yes, reach out to us. We'll put something together like that.
But here's the thing. I've got a big issue with the media and most of the financial services industry that adds fuel to the fire. And most people have been conditioned to react to the media, particularly when it comes to investment markets. We find that the media jumps on the property boom bandwagon at the peak of the markets, which forces people to go buy property at the wrong times. We see them kind of creating this kind of hype around the market correcting and billions or trillions of dollars being wiped off, where in the grand scheme of things, it's actually not that big of a deal. And we understand that one of the biggest issues, and tying back into why we're putting a lot of emphasis on investor education and financial literacy, is because these are the issues that are impeding people to get money into the market in the first place and stick the course in order to achieve their financial goals. So if we do talk about these things, we want to give you the no bullshit rundown of it, help you explain what the context of this kind of news means, and try and guide you to make the right decisions, not knee-jerk decisions that drive you to try and pick the markets and speculate, because unfortunately it just doesn't work. If we were able to do that, then there would be a lot more wealthy people in the world, because we could just kind of buy and sell all day. And unfortunately, as Sam said, there's professionals that don't get this right. And we've seen a lot of people do a lot of damage by utilising this media hype to make financial decisions.
Yeah, look, I love the idea of it. We need to, if we're going to do it, we need to get it right. This is something where I think we're really towing the line with.
Let us know what you want to learn about. If there's updates or commentary that you want on financial markets or what's going on in the world or Australia, feel free to let us know. Post up a comment, and we'll kind of give you what you want.
All right, sounds good.
All right. This is a question that I got from one of my clients on Monday, and I'll give you some context. They've been in business for a really long time, and they went to a social media training day they paid really good money for on Friday, and she was really annoyed because it was terrible. She got really nothing out of it. It wasn't interactive. It wasn't engaging, and it was really a waste of time. And so she asked me, she goes, I know you guys are really active on social media. It's something that we've never done before. Does it add value, and how do we actually get started? And look, we're active on social media because it's a really good way for us to build a relationship with you guys. It allows us to give you valuable insights in your busy lives to ensure that you're guided when it comes to making future decisions. And even if just one of the things that we say helps you work through this kind of the mess of I guess the financial world and landscape, then we've done our job. So what's important about utilizing social media, particularly as a small business owner, is that you need to speak to your customers, and you need to speak to the people in which want to hear from you and get value from what expertise you have to offer them. So you need to get that right first, and that will ultimately determine the platforms that you leverage for social media. So as an example, given that we have a lot to say, and we want to try and paint the picture and the context around some of the things that we talk about, Twitter doesn't work for us. If you check out our Twitter, we post very, very rarely because within the limit of the characters that we can use, we just can't get our point across. It's just not worthwhile. If we were market commentators, of course, we could say, oh, yeah, the Aussie market's down 5% or whatever, but that's just not what we do. Further to that, how you get started is that you need to define that customer avatar, that ideal client, the person that you want to speak to or the people you want to speak to, and you need to create a social media schedule. You need to create a plan. We do a monthly plan, and then we have Ken, a part of our team, who creates our weekly plans, working with Rog, who's our new creative director. And we basically have all of the content scheduled. We know exactly what we want to post up, when we want to post it, what we want to talk about, and we have it all scheduled in advance. And because we do that, we're able to post a lot of great content because we're breaking down our kind of big podcasts and Ask Aureus Anything Q&As and kind of drip feeding that content out to all of our platforms. So if you're going to do it, make sure you have a plan, you have a schedule, you try and use some level of automation. Don't try and keep it up to date every single day. It's just, you're not going to stick the course. We use Hootsuite. It works really well for us. And it just allows us to do it all at once. And to get started, just make sure that you're going to stick the course. You can't just post once a week and think that it's going to get you traction. We went to a seminar a few months ago where they said that today, somebody needs to have between 12 and 15 interactions with you and your business before they're willing to even start a conversation. So if you're posting once a week, how long is it going to take you to build a relationship with that person? So that's very important. Look, a bit of a shameless plug for one of our members and clients, Kat Haig from Growth Sprout. She has created a platform for small business people to help them learn about how they go and do marketing in their business. And also walk them through all of the steps to getting it implemented. So if you're a small business owner, you want to learn more about marketing in your business and don't want to have to pay for a marketer to pay top rates for them to come into your business and do it all for you, go check out Growth Sprout. Kat's done a phenomenal job. She's got a few great communities on Facebook that you can get a part of, and it's going to do wonders for your business. It's helped us a lot.
Yeah, I think most people, especially when they're not familiar with social media, they throw it in the too hard bucket. But you have to market. You have to market the business. And a lot of people go, well, I'm busy. I don't need to market. Well, if you marketed and you had twice the amount of work that you had today, maybe you could put on a few more staff and do double the amount of revenue. So I don't think not marketing. It's not an option. And I think on the other big flip side of it, and people just spend a lot of time on social media, just doing social media marketing, that's not enough either. Then you need to have other meetings, you need to have other channels, even though we have, a very well-structured social media strategy now. It's a content marketing strategy, and we've worked out, the ads and the funnels and all the rest of it. We've delved very deep into it.
You're just getting started.
We're only getting started, but it's only a part of our, our marketing or our lead generations. You know what I mean? Majority of our business still comes from word of mouth from our existing clients. So it's you can't be on either full side of it where you just ignore it completely, and you can't be on the other side of it where very few businesses can just survive with social media marketing. You're not Kylie Jenner, like you can't just post photos of yourself and grow the business. But you need to be somewhere in the middle where you have it as a real part of the business that you focus on, and you'll generate work out of it. Yeah. All right. So I got a question here from an existing client of mine. They've come to me and they said, I recently got engaged to my long-term partner and we want to buy a property together. However, I believe the deposit is holding us back. What should we do? We need to essentially save a big deposit if that's what's holding someone back. There's a few ways around this, right? If you don't own any property, then you have two choices. You can either use a family guarantee if you have a family member that owns a property that has enough equity in it. I've spoken about it before. I won't go into too much detail about what a family guarantee is. Or you need to save up a larger cash deposit. So when you go back to saving up a larger cash deposit, that means that you need a surplus cash flow in your budget every single month, right? So you need to have, $1,000 or $2,000 or $500 or whatever it is. You need to be able to consistently save a set amount every single month. And if you can't, you need to adjust your budget. So you're not going to be able to buy the property if you can't save the deposit. So look at your budget. You see, you know what your incomings are into the household. You know what your expenses are. You need to either A, increase your income, or B, decrease your expenses and widen that gap to get a surplus, and then use that surplus, save it up, and then contribute it towards the property. It's this is growing your wealth 101, this stuff.
And it's about having that plan, right? Because, for example, I was speaking to a client of mine today, and he wasn't quite sure. He wanted to buy a property for him to live in, given that he works between Perth and Melbourne. He wasn't sure how much he needed. So he said, well, should we just pick a number? And I said, no, we shouldn't. We should be really, really clear and specific and be able to visualize what it is that we're trying to achieve. So I gave him the task of jumping onto realestate.com.au or Domain and finding 3 properties at 3 different price points in Melbourne and 3 properties in 3 different price points in Perth that he felt that he would be comfortable living in. The idea of that is that we are able to build a strategy deposit of how much he would need as a deposit for each of those properties, and then talk about how long it's actually going to take based on his current ability to save and create surplus to get into all those properties, and then discuss, okay, well, if it's going to take you 2 years to get this one, 1 year to get this one, and 3 years to get this one, then how long are you actually comfortable waiting to get into that property? Is it the be-all and end-all to get it into the most expensive one? Therefore, we have no choice. We either have to stick the course based on your current lifestyle or make some adjustments, either earn more money or reduce our costs. But once again, we come back to that methodology. It needs to be simple, it needs to be sustainable, and it needs to be scalable. So the simplicity of it is, I need $150,000 or $200,000 as a deposit, and I save $3,000 a month. So it's going to take me X amount of years in order to get there. So if we're able to work that out, then it is very, very simple. Our ability to sustain the course is about, are we still able to live a life and do some of the things that we enjoy by sticking to that savings goal? And scalability, okay, well, can I increase my ability of earnings or decrease some of my costs that are really not necessary, and therefore expedite or speed up the process in pursuit of that goal? So get clear of what you're working towards, guys. If you have a very ambiguous goal, you are not going to stick the path, because that deference of gratification, there is no light at the end of the tunnel. There's no reason to defer the gratification. So therefore, you're only going to consume what you have, and you're not going to stick the course because the journey is too painful.
Yeah, I think when you talk about this with some people, they have a very adverse reaction to it. Do you know what I mean? You tell them that for them to achieve their goals, they need to save X amount every month, and then they'll get there. And they say, we can't save that amount, so we've got to cut your expenses. We can't cut our expenses. All right, we need to earn more. I can't earn more. I don't believe in that. Do you know what I mean? But majority of people, a huge majority of people, can either cut their expenses or they can go out and earn more. And I think a politician got in trouble a couple of years ago for telling people to earn more. But it's true. Do you know what I mean?
Here's the harsh reality, right? You don't have the deposit because you haven't put in the hard work, right? You look at your peers and you can see other people who are out there who have got themselves into the property market. Yeah, of course, some of them have been given a bit of a leg up because their families may be a bit better off. They've been given a gift. They've been given a family guarantee. But if you don't have those opportunities, well, you're on your own. And it's really your ability to stick the course and invest the time to get your foot on the ladder. And that will always be the hardest part of your journey. If you put your foot on the ladder and you buy a good quality property, and although it's going to be hard yakka to get there, it's going to work for you for the rest of your life. So you need to work out, you need to come to terms with the fact that you just haven't put in enough work yet, and now's the time. Confucius once said, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, the second best time's today. So start bloody planting. Plant all the seeds. You'll get there, I promise.
All right, that's good. That's a good one. It's for you, mate. Cool.
All right. So I find myself living paycheck to paycheck. It starts off good and ends up bad at the end of the month. How do I get out of this cycle? Now, this is very typical for people who get paid monthly. I used to be in this boat when I was an employee, before I built my values-based advice model, which I created more so to hold myself accountable because I was experiencing this. My reality was that on payday, I was rich, going out to restaurants and doing nice things. And then coming to the end of the month, I was picking crumbs out of the back of the couch to try and stay alive. So the thing is that the issue that you have is your ability to regulate your personal spending or your discretional spending. Because let's face it, your fixed expenses aren't the issue. Of course, you may be able to optimize your fixed expenses, negotiate your utilities, delete some subscriptions that you don't need. But where things tend to go astray is your personal spending. So coffees in the morning, going out for dinners and lunches, buying a nice pair of shoes, going on holidays, all of these things. So you need to implement the budgeting structure. And the idea of the budgeting structure is that irrespective of your payment frequency, you should drip feed yourself an amount, a fixed amount for personal spending each and every single week. So if you decide you need $100 a week, $200 a week, $300 a week, the idea should be that you set up an automatic transfer from your hub account to your spending account on a weekly basis. For most people, it's on a Friday, so they have it over the weekend. And that allows you to regulate and drip feed yourself the amount of money that's going to allow you to ensure that you have consistency through the whole month. Most of the time, people who are experiencing that paycheck to paycheck mentality, one, don't have a budgeting structure in place, and two, haven't got a plan. Because without the plan, you can't stick the course. Without the budgeting structure, it's too easy to spend money. So I'd advocate jump onto and grab a copy of my book if you haven't got it already. In there, there's the diagram of the ideal budgeting structure. If you don't want to spend the 99 cents, feel free to shoot us a message. I'll send you the budgeting structure and I'll show you how to apply it. It's really, really important. It's super simple, but it works. We've used it with thousands of clients, and what I use personally. And it's really helped myself get out of that living paycheck to paycheck and helped us really pass it on to many, many clients who've had profound results with it.
I'll give you guys a tip with budgeting. So a lot of people get caught up with their budgeting. They get all the small things right, but they don't plan for the big things. So they think every month there's this one-off cost that's just a one-off and it's never going to happen again. So, they had a wedding they went to and they gave a $500 gift, or they had the car had to be serviced and it cost $500, or they bought a Thermomix or some one of these costs, or they had to go on a holiday this month and it was $1,000 holiday or $1,500 holiday, and they say it's a one-off, and they make excuses for the cost. These things aren't one-offs. You're going to go on a holiday sometimes. Your car has to be serviced. You're going to give gifts to people. You're going to need to pay your rego. Your insurance is going to come up. There's all these things that people keep telling themselves they're one-offs when they're really not. Pick them out and save them and add them into the budget and then see how much it changes everything.
And we typically have an account called the Bills and Holidays account where we work out what are the annualized amounts for all those big ticket things, and then break it down into a monthly savings goal, meaning that it's never going to sneak up on you again. So if you want to buy a Thermomix that's going to cost you $2,000, then it's $160 a month that you've got to save for it, as opposed to it smashing your budget, you're putting it on the credit card and then spending the next few months trying to pay it off, which is just going to cause stress on your budget, push you further away from your goals, and not allow you to stick the course.
And a lot of small business owners fall into this trap with their tax. They don't save for their tax. They think it's their money. It's not their money. And we have the holidays and big ticket savings account. But for business owners, we've got a tax savings account as well. It's the same thing. You need to plan for this stuff.
Yep.
All right. So, a friend of mine asked, work is going well, and I've been saving good money every month recently. I want to buy my first property in the next couple of years. Where should I invest my savings? And then the background to this question was essentially, where's the best investment I can make for this money that I'm saving? Should I put it in a particular stock, or should I put it in the share market, or into one of these apps that goes and invests the money? I don't particularly invest in any of the small apps. I don't particularly pick shares. Investing in managed funds, whilst a great idea, in this scenario, I wouldn't do it. And the reason for that is because the man's main goal is to buy property in the next couple of years. So with that being the case, we don't know if stock markets are going to go up or down or sideways in the next couple of years. So what I would suggest in something like this is nail your budgeting structure, get your savings, get it into a high interest savings account where it's safe, and just keep plowing at it as much as you can until you've got the money for the deposit. And then you're better off making that one big deposit, borrowing 80 or 90% of a property's value, buying that as your home or as an investment property. And then instead of having a 10 or a $50,000 or $100,000 investment, now you might have a $500, $700, $1 million investment. And the compounding effect on that bigger number is massive, and you haven't taken the risk with your savings either.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that putting it into growth investments for the short term comes back to that previous question of should I buy an investment property and then sell it to buy my dream home when the duration is within a couple of years. It's speculation. Typically, when we look at investing, there's three variables. There's the amount that you can afford to contribute. There is the time in which you have the ability to invest, and it's the asset allocation. How much do we invest in growth assets or defensive assets? And the mixture of those three things determines the risk versus the return. And when we decrease the time frame, then that is increasing the risk, because we don't know what volatility is going to occur within that period of time. But I do agree that the money needs to be out of sight, out of mind. It cannot be in a linked savings account, because the temptation for many of us is too great to dive into that when things come up. So we need to ensure that we protect ourselves from ourselves. So I prefer to utilize a completely unlinked savings account with a bank in which that doesn't use transaction cards or debit cards, and that takes a number of days for the money to be transferred to and from. There are some short-term investments, such as bonds or fixed interest investments that have short duration, that can be quite safe and give you a reasonable return. Given that we've got low interest rates, it's not fantastic. Term deposits, if you've got a lump sum to invest, then sure, but we need to consider that you can only invest in it on the upfront, and it is locked in for a period of time. So that is subject to whatever interest rates do over that period of time, and doesn't allow you to continually contribute to it. So high interest savings accounts and short-term defensive investments are often best. Key here is not necessarily the returns you're going to get, because if you're only getting 2 or 3%, it's not really going to do much for you anyway. It's how much you can contribute over that period of time that's going to make all the difference. So the most important thing is that you just don't dip into it. Have it unlinked and make sure that you can't get to it.
You've hit the nail on the head there, mate. So I've had a lot of my clients who've done very well in business and in property over the past few years, and they ring me up. They go, Sam, I've saved 100 grand, 150 grand. I want to buy another investment property, and they can't buy it because of the tighter lending rules. And they go, well, stuff it, I'm going to buy a Porsche. No, you're not. Don't save up all this money to invest in something and then blow it on a Porsche. So it's stack it away, keep your eyes on the big prize, and then go forward.
Yeah, exactly right. So those are all of our questions. I'm not sure if anyone has any last sneaky questions that they want to ask before we wrap things up. We'll give you
give you guys another 40 seconds.
But look, we've really enjoyed doing this weekly Q&A. I think that this is one of the very, very easy ways for us to add a lot of value to a lot of people, because we've all had these questions at some point in our life. I know I've had these questions, Sam's had these questions, and we've learnt the answers, and we've now got the ability to answer those questions for all of you in the community. So we hope that you're getting a lot of value out of it. Of course, we're going to put up a poll for Sam's up-and-coming book of what you want him to write about. We'd really enjoy your input. Those of you don't feel like you are being judged by posting up questions, just chuck them up on the community. We're all here together. We're all here because we want to add value to each other. We want to achieve a life of abundance and financial freedom. Here we go. Sam should write a book about a pole. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Marcel. I'm trying not to make my mind wander. I'm just seeing Sam spinning on a pole.
We're done here. We're so off track. We are so off track.
We're straight off course. We're in a ditch right now. So, of course, if you've got any questions, any insights, even share your experiences. We will all have something to contribute, and this is meant to be a safe place that we can all kind of support each other on our respective wealth journeys.
Yeah, and I think money's still, myself's having an absolute great time.
She's loving it.
Absolutely. Money's still taboo. You know, for most people, they've been taught not to talk about money, that it's rude. People get upset. A lot of people are really emotionally attached to money. Jackson and I are so, I wouldn't say jaded by it, but we're so used to it now. This is all we do every day. We just talk about money for 12 hours a day. So for you guys to reach out and ask us your questions, it's not something that we haven't been asked before. And if you're brave enough to ask the question, I'm sure there's other people in the community who would actually benefit from the response.
Yep. So get involved, continue to contribute. And of course, those of you who are contributing will go into our weekly prize draw for the community. Look, as we said before, if there's anyone that you believe that can get value from these types of things, feel free to add them in and share, invite. We want to grow the community to impact as many lives as we possibly can. So hopefully you get insights out of it, and we'll catch you the same time next week.
Thank you.
Toots.